This is the Seahawkers podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz. I am joined by my good buddy, Adam Emmert, for our live post-game reaction show as our Seattle Seahawks defeated the stupid Rams 30-25, Adam.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a little unsatisfying, right? Just with what was on the line, or rather, what was not on the line. But it's always better to win than it is to lose, as you say, Brandon. And here we are. They beat the Rams. They end up with double-digit wins, and that's a season, folks.
That's it. We're out of here. Okay, maybe not. We're going to say thanks to Samuel Gelbert, who is coming in with the 3025 Super Chat. Big thanks to live executive producer Samuel Gelber. Should feel good to end the season with a win. Few teams get to experience it and feel good. But the last two times we got rid of Russ and fired Pete, which did not feel good. Can we do something to build off the success obtained? That is the big question. And I think Sam summed it up nicely too, because it should feel good to end the season with a victory. It's not, unless you're winning in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the greatest feeling to have, and you get to enjoy that all off season. You know, maybe the second best is just having a really solid win to close out the season. But I don't know if the way that everything played out, if especially with the way this game played out, 30-25, like offensively, 30 points, awfully nice. 25 points against a Rams B team. It feels tough to be super satisfied about it.
Yeah, it was nice to see the offense put some points on the board and to watch Geno get a lot of his escalators. And I think did he hit all of them?
He hit all three that he was gunning for in this game, because it had to be 10 wins. It had to be over 200 some yards. Geno finished the day 20-27 for 223 yards. So he hit it by probably at least 50 yards. And then 20-27, that's good enough to be over 70% completion percentage on the season. And he hits that too. Now, we just have to remind everybody that despite the fact that he hit the escalators, the money doesn't actually kick in until the start of the new league year. So depending on, there's so much that can happen now in the next couple months, whether they have to, decide to keep Geno past March 16th for him to get that money. I'm assuming the Seahawks would want to restructure a contract if they are going to keep him. And if they don't keep him, that kind of stinks for him, because he technically, or quote unquote, earns that money, but doesn't get to see that money.
Right. So we'll see what the decision is down the stretch here. And we've got a number of weeks here to discuss at earnest the no Geno situation. But I think one thing, even with the offense putting up 30 points in this game, which, I mean, that's fun. And you saw Grubb actually get to running the football, especially on the last drive. He seemed to actually finally figure it out. It took him to the last drive of the year. It does feel like, even though they put up 30 points, that's too little too late. Like, I can't imagine that the decision wasn't 99.8% made about his future going into this game, whether they keep him or they let him go. I don't think there was much that was going to come out of a game against what should be the B team. I know there were some starters out there too, but I don't know that this moves the needle for Grubb.
No, I mean, for some people, it probably doesn't move the needle much for Geno either, but a nice 4-touchdown day by Geno Smith. We've got Ryan 911 with a $9.99 super chat. Live executive producer. Fun game, fun season. Thanks for all the many hours of entertainment, guys. Adam, it is the last game of the season for our Seahawks, and I'm going to miss doing this every Sunday.
Yeah, you betcha, man. These post-game shows are a great time. Love the chat and everything. I love having Clinton here to be able to go through the chat so I don't get distracted by it as we talk about the game. So, but just a big thanks to all you guys throughout the season. It's been awesome having you along for the ride and watching the channel grow and all of the support and all of that. Just from the bottom of our hearts, thank you a ton. And we'll be looking forward to doing this again next season and hopefully being in the playoffs. It's frustrating to end up at double-digit wins, Brandon.
Oh,
and not in the dance.
Yeah. Well, and then it comes down to a strength of schedule tiebreaker. Like, just throw us now into another one-game playoff with the Rams, and let's settle this like the right way. Bring all the starters back. Although with Geno being hobbled toward the end of the game, that might not be the best way for our Seahawks to go out. But I want to see it decided in a real game rather than the fifth tiebreaker based on other teams that we've both beaten throughout the season. It's annoying. Carly Perkins, not annoying. $4.99 super chat. This game was stupidly close, but I'm happy to beat the catfishing Rams. I hope this isn't Lockett's last game. He and everyone deserve a better OC.
Yeah, we do deserve a better OC. And, Ryan busted my balls here a little bit. Yeah, I was out on Grub before the season started. And I'm just going to say, because I was fucking right. Like every single thing that I said about the dude is exactly what happened. So, I don't know what else you want.
Carly asking, when is Grub likely gone? I think that I don't know if they would be as shrewd as the Patriots were in firing Jared Mayo like on Sunday, but I think we would know by the end of this coming week.
You would think so.
And it's not like would they come out and say if they're keeping him? Like, they would probably come out and say no major coaching changes. There would be some kind of announcement, I would think, because there's going to be a post-game wrap-up press conference with the coach this week. So we'll probably have an idea at least toward the middle of the week if there's no big news that comes from just coming out of this game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I'm looking forward to a new direction. We'll see what that looks like. I think one of the more frustrating things about this game in particular, though, Brandon, is to watch Jimmy G and Sean McVay go out there and put up as many points as they did, make it a close game. When the defense was out there with most of its starters. Now, unfortunately, they were down a few DBs, and I think that did make a difference, no doubt about it. But
did it, though? Because the way that Sean McVay and that Rams offense was operating, it was a lot of what we've seen from him against Pete Carroll defenses so many years. Run everybody deep, leave somebody out open underneath, and just dump it down. And at some points they were, screen left, screen right, and they were attacking the DBs then that were left on the edges, and a lot of Trey Brown missed tackles that could have been tackles for a loss, and Nehemiah Pritchett falling down on the outside. And so, yeah, when it's your backups out there, there's that part of it that I guess you can excuse, but it's kind of that same type of offense. And he always seemed to be able to know exactly when to throw that screen where we're starting to get pressure, starting to get close. And he's like, okay, now I'm going to mix in a screen. And it would be a first down on like a 3rd and 8.
Yeah. And look, I'm not saying that they gave up all those points just because they had a few DBs out. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it was a factor to a degree. And you kind of pointed out the Trey Brown stuff, Pritchett falling down, all that sort of thing. And that's kind of what I was getting at. But you're 100% right about the way that McVay is able to play offense against this team often. And it is really annoying to watch him run those misdirection screens time and time again. And then right when you think that, you're going to play up on that and try to shut that down, then everybody off deep. And it's like, oh, crap. They all got to run deep. And when you say, oh, crap, that's when the camera goes off.
That's just what happens. Your camera goes away.
I don't know why that's just randomly doing that, but we'll come back to that here in a minute, guys. And at the end of the day, like, it is super frustrating to see how easy it is for McVay to manufacture small yardage plays, because one of the things that I think stood out in this game was the way that McVay gets to a 3-yard gain here, a 7-yard gain here, a 4-yard gain here, and staying ahead of the sticks and on schedule. And I think that's a sharp contrast to what we've seen from Grubb for the majority of the year, where I think the microcosm of his entire tenure here in his first season as OC was 3rd and 1 from about our own 30, beginning of the 4th. And we end up in gun with Kenny Mack back there, not even Charbonnet. And they throw like a 15-yard pass to Tyler on a comeback, like on 3rd and freaking 1. Like that's what we do all the time. And he's always trying to hunt for these much larger plays. It's 2nd and 7, and we're trying to push the ball down the field, 18 yards. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and that's one of the big reasons I would like to see him freaking gone.
I'm kind of curious about this too. Sugarman Biscuit asking, also, why does Sharps and K-Mac look way better in the backfield behind the O-line than K9 does, or is it just me? I have a thought on this, Adam. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to piggyback off of yours. So,
okay. Well, I'll go first because I think that it's really interesting how this season played out, because we went through that stretch where early on in the season, they're kind of bad at running the football. And so everybody looked bad. And then they went through the stretch toward the middle of the season where they just didn't run the football at all. So you couldn't really get a beat on how anybody looked in the backfield. And then ever since, I'd say it kind of switched around the time Abe Lucas came in. And then the offensive line, they started to they started to get some of those run plays where the design gap runs, and they were having some success with those, but they never used K9 in any of those, like a handful of those design gap runs, because K9 more of a zone runner, or at least that's how they used him throughout the later part, well, throughout all season, but even later in the season when they were mixing some of those up. So that's why it ended up looking that way, I think, toward the end of the season. And then K9 got hurt, so we didn't really see him behind the O-line once they were being a more effective running offensive line. At least that's how it looked to me if you were to break it out throughout the season.
My question would be, what was the game that Grubb committed to running the football that K9 was healthy and available for? Which game was that? Because I didn't see it.
Yeah, there's no answer to that.
Right, exactly. Like Sharps had the huge game against the Cards the second go around. And I think if K9's in that game, he looks as good as Sharps, if not better. I do know that
the Jets. See, Nate says the Jets.
There you go.
There was one game.
There you go. And then this game against the Rams, I don't know what other game that they actually committed to running the football other than this last game, especially in the first half, and then that game against the Cards. I don't know what game that Grubb actually gave him the opportunity to go out there and look better than the other two guys.
In this offseason, I would love to go back and actually look at it, because I feel like this is a misconception that K9 does too much dancing in the backfield. Does he do it sometimes? Yes. To the point where it's a detriment to the team, I think that's a misnomer.
Look, and I agree with you on that. I think if you go back to his rookie year, I think that's an absolute legitimate criticism. I think now here in his third season, it is much, much better. And like you said, just not a lot of opportunity for him when the offensive line got a little bit better with run blocking with Abe's return.
It's saying, after watching the game and watching them almost lose to the second string Rams team, I changed my mind to blow it up. This team is not winning it soon. And it's tough with that, with the team finishing 10-7, right? Because in one sense, you're like, hey, double-digit wins. It feels like this is a winning type team. To blow that up, I think it's still. I think we can all have our own opinion on which way it goes. Ultimately, the team's going to decide, and I think what we should do as a fan base, though, is base our decisions, like once we start to see it go one way or another, like basing our criticism and comments based on, hey, if they're going for it, are they going for it enough? If they're blowing it up, is it truly a blow up? It's the in-between stuff that I think that you and I are kind of on that idea of, well, let's just not do the in-between version.
Yeah. And look, on our flagship show, we got into, do you double down or tear it down? And that was kind of the main part of that discussion. And just as you said, Brandon, we're not really advocating, completely for one or the other at this point. But what we are advocating for is no more tinkering around the edges. Like that's clearly not what this team needs. And I'm definitely more team double down on this. And I don't know if I'll go through it today on this show, but I've got a basic skeleton of a plan of what I'd like to see them do. But you're right, Brandon. If they, whatever way they decide to go here this offseason, whether it is double down or tear it down, I'm actually comfortable with it either way. And then it is just a matter of, okay, if you're going tear it down route, are you doing it enough? Are you doing it the right way? Are you making shrewd moves to try to load up and rebuild this whole thing? Or if it's team double down, is it, hey, you can't just go out and get another Laken Tomlinson type to plug into the offensive line, neglect another guard spot and be like, yep, totally good.
That would be that would make this offseason frustrating. Not frustrating for Leonard Williams though, because it seems like, I hope with all of the nonsense that came out after him missing the Pro Bowl selection, that now people start to dig in and really look at what he was able to accomplish this year, and he will get the All-Pro selection. I don't know if there's two defensive tackles in the AFC that could ultimately beat him out, like if it's Chris Jones and somebody else on the AFC side, because that would be, I think, the thing that would maybe hold him up from that. But Clinton asking in the chat, did Leo get credit for the second sack? Yes, he did. Leo finishes the day with 2 sacks, and so he also gets to double-digit sacks on the season.
Yeah, congratulations to Leo. Career year, fantastic player. Absolute crime he did not make the Pro Bowl. I don't understand that at all. It just proves that the Pro Bowl is irrelevant and a total joke.
He did start to come on toward the end of the season, so I don't know at what point that they. I mean, if they did the voting like around Thanksgiving, I felt like he finished so strong that, I mean, if they're. That's the only thing that I can think of. I'm trying to come up with a reason that would make sense. It doesn't make sense. Northwest Gambit, member for 15 months here out on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, man.
Click the join button if you want to be a member on the channel. And you can throw in a monthly chat like this, like Northwest Gambit. 4-2 against divisional opponents. Go Hawks. 1 loss to the Niners, 1 loss to the Rams. And we got a win over the Rams B team.
Absolutely. At least we split with the McShanahans. That feels good. This is an improvement in terms of Mike McDonald's tenure as his first year as head coach, as opposed to the last couple of years with Pete. Being hyper competitive in the division, that's a great start. And then, as you pointed out, Brandon, just some strength of schedule stuff that's keeping us out of the playoffs at this point. And that's hilarious, Nate. Yeah, it is concepts of the play, because I'm not running for GM either. You know what I'm saying?
Nate Schutz also saying, hey, let's highlight that awesome Geno Smith touchdown where he escaped the sack and hit DK. Geno Smith in the red zone. How could we not have this Geno Smith red zone version all season? Well, probably because you weren't effective at running the football until this game either. But Geno Smith, we had the pass to Bobo that got them on the board early. And then the one where he escapes pressure, does a complete 360, keeps moving forward, sets his feet, and darts it in for a touchdown. A very nice TD by Geno.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of those you look at it and you're like, Geno's the problem, huh? Like when he makes a miraculous play like that, it's hard for me to get on board with that line of thinking. But he had a great game, and I'm glad that he finished with the 4 touchdowns to help balance out the touchdown to interception numbers that I think now reflects a little closer to the season he actually had, because numbers do lie to a degree.
They do, because now he finishes probably with 20 plus touchdowns, where when it looked the sub 20 numbers look kind of gross, especially with as many interceptions that he had, but 0 interceptions on the day today. And yeah, it's just a weird, we're probably going to end up talking about Geno a lot over these next few weeks, because until there's a decision. It's obviously, and Geno's not bad, just inconsistent. But do you point? You can also point to the inconsistency as part of being part of this offensive coordinator, previous offensive coordinators. Like I would love to see him like with a guy who is competent at running plays, like which we haven't had for 3 seasons now.
That's right. The entire time that Geno has been the starter, his coordinators have been Shane Waldron and some dude from college. Like that's what it's been. And he's managed to overcome that and be the comeback player of the year and a solid mid-tier starter throughout that process. I think that's amazing. And again, I'll say it for the 1,000th time. You will never get me off of the spot that you switch Baker, Darnold, and Geno, and you switch their positions around on different teams. They all have similar seasons to the guy that they just replaced.
That reminds me, I did get an email from somebody who was pushing back on that idea because
that's fun.
Baker Mayfield has had a pretty good season so far this year. He had a really good day today too. I was going to save it for the flagship show, but we can get into it now. It was from John Orell, writes in, says, Adam saying that Geno and Baker are the same quarterback in different situations is biased homer lunacy. And I can't take you seriously as a podcaster until you own up to this. Geno had a few good games, but is not ever going to be a top 10 quarterback and shouldn't be a starter. Baker is playing lights out and his ceiling is so much higher than what Geno showed in his one good season. Unreal. I love your show, but this is one take that made me lose respect for you. It's like you're clinging to a few good performances and ignoring the bad ones. I agree that all the anti-Geno people aren't right either, but that doesn't make your Geno as good as Baker take correct. I will agree that for Baker. Oh wait, no, that was my response.
Who's that from? Who's that from?
This is from John.
John? Okay. Hey, look, that was a respectful pushback on it, and I appreciate that as always. With it being homeristic lunacy. That's lunacy. Look, think about it in these terms. What was Sam Darnold's reputation before he showed up in Minnesota?
Yeah, not good.
Not good. And then all of a sudden he's in Minnesota. Now he's great. We should get him instead of Geno. Yeah. Okay. And then what was Baker's reputation before he ended up in Tampa?
Yeah, not very well. He had been with the Browns and then he went to Carolina and then the Rams. Yeah, he was journeyman at best and yeah, not great.
I'll even throw Jared fucking Goff in there. What was his reputation before he ended up with the Lions?
Yeah, and that was after going and taking the Rams to the Super Bowl.
Okay, so you take Geno, who's clearly in. Let's put it like this: of Darnold, Baker, and Geno, who is in the worst situation of those three by far?
Oh, of those three, it would be Geno.
Absolutely. And then you say that it's crazy to think that he would be better in a better situation. The only reason that you don't think that he could be on the level of this year's Baker is because you just haven't seen him have that sort of support around him yet. It's the same as believing, as I did, that Baker sucked before he went to Tampa. Turns out to be wrong. He just needed a little bit better supporting cast. I also thought Sam Darnold sucked before he ended up with Minnesota. Turns out I was wrong there with that one. It looks like he just needed a better supporting cast and to be on a team that actually knows how to construct one. And it's the same exact thing with Geno here. So the idea that like I should lose respect for a take that's clearly grounded in reality, I don't know what to tell you.
I think we also have to get away, House, from pointing to Geno's record as a quarterback over 3 years.
I've never bought into
or even his stuff. Even if 45 and 48 sounds like his record going back to the Jets and as a backup. So I think that you have to actually watch him play football and because you can point to some of his inconsistencies, you can point to interceptions, you can point to red zone issues this year. I think pointing to record as a sign of him being mediocre is that's more of him being on mediocre teams. And you can even put these last 3 years with the Seahawks into that mediocre teams category because you go back to the first year where he had one of his best years as a Seahawk. And now they're, obviously basing his escalators off of that first season back with the team. They had a terrible defense that year. Like that was not a good defense. And that's what led to a mediocre team overall. Last year's offense wasn't particularly great. Defense, also not real great either.
Abject failure. He's been backed up by two abject failures of defenses, had a decent one this year, and then had another abject failure at OC.
But I will say, I still point to the fact that I don't think there's one thing that's very similar with Darnold, with Geno, and with Baker, is that if you pay any of those guys too much, you're putting your team then in a position to where you're not going to have that support around them.
Correct.
That allows them to be successful to the manner that they have been to these points of the season. We've seen Baker with a pretty competent offensive line, some nice pieces around him, Hall of Fame wide receiver, a really nice running back running game with Bucky Irving. Like they have those pieces, and then an average defense, I think, down in Tampa. So I think that helps them out. The Vikings, good defense, a really nice coach and competence in terms of their offense. So yeah, they've been in better situations here this past year that allowed them to be successful. I think though that if your argument is that if the Seahawks pay him $45 million, Geno Smith, that they're going to continue to be average, and I agree with that. I think that's going to be the case. They're going to continue to be average if they end up having to pay him too much.
Is 45 the number where you think you can't build the roster around him, even with
35
with salary cap voodoo? Because my whole thing on the double down part is you do the salary cap voodoo of the Rams a couple years ago, where you just signed everybody, you kick the can down the road, and you make the cap hits later, and you just say screw it and you go for it. Now, does that mean I want to pay Geno Smith 45? No. For me, like if you get him to 35 to 40, if it got up to 42, I guess. But also remember that if you're in that 35 to $40 million range with the contracts that are going to be signed by the top level guys, the next crop that comes up, you're going to be looking at a contract that's dead middle of the pack. So you're paying for the exact value for the exact value of Geno Smith. Yeah. Like, I don't understand why that's not an acceptable thing for people.
It is acceptable, but I think it gets to that point to where there's got to be a maximum. And I think I'm with Vieth. The max for 30 to 35 average anymore that you're overpaying. And it's not so much that you're overpaying for Geno. It's that you don't leave enough, like I was saying, for that support around the team. So,
well, let me put it to you like this. So the difference between signing him to 35 and 40 is $5 million.
Right.
What are you going to put around Geno with $5 million at 35 that you can't with at 40? Like what big piece?
I mean, a defensive or an offensive lineman that's
for
making
$5 million,
$7 million rather than $2 million.
I don't know, man. I don't think that really gets you a ton.
I don't
think that's something that you can massage away when it comes to cap voodoo.
I think it's, rather than pointing to positions, I think I would say that it gives you some leeway to have some of the depth that you need in case, because injuries are going to happen throughout the year. Yeah. And you have more sustainable depth that allows you to withstand some of those issues throughout the season. And, keeping Geno upright doesn't hurt either. Ryan Eady gifted one Seahawkers podcast fan membership. A big thanks to Ryan for the gift membership there too. And there was one other thing I wanted to go back to in the chat here about the defense, because we should give a little bit of credit, Adam, to the fact that the defense closed out the game. Especially, I was not looking forward to seeing hobbled Geno Smith going back out there and trying to get the team into field goal range if the defense were to give up a late touchdown.
Didn't seem to affect him though on that last drive. Geno's a warrior too. That's another thing that you need to take into account. I mean, he didn't need to go out there and, like, the second he was hurt, he could have gotten out of the game and put Sam Howell in there in a meaningless game.
The snail saying $5 million gets you the best fullback in the game.
All right, so Sam, that's the best argument I've heard so far, and you know exactly how to get to me, man. That's for sure. Yeah.
Thanks to the snail for that comment. That's a good one. So now the Rams go on. The one interesting thing about how things played out with this game is that it ultimately didn't even matter, like, the draft position wise. I think everything had settled in terms of draft picks, so it was just, can the Seahawks get to 10 wins? And now the Rams fall into fourth place, or the fourth seed, and now they're going to end up playing the loser of the Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings game. And the other thing about that too is if it ends up going to an NFC championship game, they would likely then have to go on the road, which we just hope that they lose in one of these next couple weeks. Does it make you feel bad at all that they might end up getting to face the Lions? Or I guess we'll just end up basing some of our decision on how we see these two teams play tonight.
Who are they going to face if they did not end up facing Vikes Lions? Was it the Bucks?
I think
no.
No, it would have been Commanders, I believe.
Commanders, yeah. So guess what I don't feel bad about? The fact that they have to go play the Lions and the Vikes. I don't care if the Lions are all beat up on defense. They're still damn good. And Jared Goff could get his revenge again. And I don't see them winning a playoff game this year now that we ruined their day by making them go to either Minnesota or Detroit.
One other thing I'll say here too, Nate Shoots saying it's mock draft season, boys and girls. Adam, you and I, plans on going down to the Shrine Bowl at the end of the month and doing a little scouting of players at the Shrine Bowl. I think Shadur Sanders is supposed to be there and playing at that game, so that ought to be some fun.
Yeah, that will be fun. I have not looked into Shadur at all yet. I've been looking at some of the mid-tier guys, so I'm curious if the Indiana kid Rourke, I wonder if he's going to be there. I'd really like to see him. I'd like to see the kid from Ohio State too, in terms of mid-tier guys. But I do have a different idea of what they should do for the quarterback, quote unquote, of the future. If you're keeping Geno and you want a low-cost way to bring in some talent, and that's to trade what, like a fifth or a sixth to pry Jordan Travis away from the Jets. New GM coming in. They're not attached to the guy. He sat all year because of the broken leg, and that dude has legit talent.
That would be intriguing if they would be willing to give him up based on how they close out the season. Maybe they're looking to draft within the first round, and maybe they would be willing to make some kind of a move. That's curious to me because I don't think that the JJ stuff, one, I think it would cost an awful lot, like giving up a first rounder and whatever else you'd have to give up to get JJ away from the Vikings. I think it would either be too much, and if they're willing to give him up, maybe he's more injured than they're letting on. I don't like it.
Well, the idea that you'd have to give up more than what the Vikings paid for the guy, and he's now had 2 knee surgeries since and hasn't seen the field, like, is preposterous. And secondly, if you're the Vikings, everybody acts like they have to get rid of one of the 2 guys. Like, oh, well, you got it. Why? Why would you get rid of a young JJ McCarthy when never on Jackson Dart?
And never on Milton either. Like, just because he had a good game today. Let's not go crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm good on that. Yeah, for sure. But there's no reason for the Vikings to get rid of either of the guys. Bring back Sam if he's just lightning in a bottle for 1 year, and you find that out, then you got JJ. Like, I don't understand what the urgency would be to get rid of JJ. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's, again, more of what we'll get into the offseason. But I wanted to throw that out there so that way, if you are looking at who's going to be playing at the East-West Shrine game down there in Dallas, and you have some guys in mind that you might think are Seahawky type players, then think about sending some of those names our way. We might get to do some interviews while we're down there, and it would be fun to maybe focus in on some of the talent that because we know that you guys watch college football too, our listeners, and you might have some guys in mind that are going to be at that game. And yeah, it would be fun to talk to some of those guys and kind of get a feel for if they truly are a Seahawks type player.
Yeah, I'll tell you who my number 1 guy is if he is there, and I don't know if he would be or not, but is Scattaboo. I sat down and watched a bunch of his stuff the other night, and that is a tone-setting running back, and I would love to have 4 quality backs on the roster next year with as badly as we seem to run through them. Oh, Ewers is awful. Fuck no.
No Ewers. No, I don't even know if is Ewers even going to come out, or is he still?
Yeah, he's a senior, I think.
Okay. I know because Carson Beck was one that was coming out that he may end up transferring, though. There's still a lot to look at. So Clinton asking, how about the Drew Lock boomerang? So going to there would be, I would be open to this, honestly.
Okay.
Drew Lock coming back, because if it were on one of those type contracts where it's cheap initially and you look out, especially if it's a negotiation thing with Geno, I think that he's one that you could find someone to put other guys around and maybe, hit him on his way up. I don't know. He at least has.
Why would you do that, Brandon? We have Sam Howell, and he's young and he's good.
I was on the Sam Howell train too, but when you compare the arm strength of Sam Howell to Drew Lock and also processing, Like the contrast is obvious.
I know. That's why I was saying before they made that awful trade for freaking Sam Howell. Look, yeah, if you can bring back Locke, I guess, for a cheap QB deal as insurance, okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And Snail not disagreeing with you, but John might.
I know.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm totally out on trying to evaluate John Schneider as a quarterback evaluator because one, he made the trade for Sam Howell, and two, he's never really drafted a quarterback apart from Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, he's only spent one draft pick of a third round or higher on a quarterback, and picked a future Hall of Famer. So
it's a pretty good record. I guess when your record's that good, you go, well, not doing that anymore. I've nailed my drafting record.
Yeah, but he went to pro days of Josh Allen and somebody else. Like, he must be great at it.
Exactly. Right? See, he was all in on Mahomes, Allen, Montana, Unitas, and Cunningham.
Yeah. Yep. Wanted them all the same year, I think, too, somehow. Yeah.
Yep. Well, big thanks to everybody tuning in. Is there anything else that we want to touch on from this game? I know we hit on some of the big moments, but I feel like it's more of a wrap on the season and a wrap on this 10-win season for our Seahawks and going into the offseason. Still going to be a lot to talk about, but anything from this game that jumped out at you that we haven't talked about?
Not really. And to be honest, I couldn't sit and pay real close attention to it at this point in the year, knowing that it didn't matter much. I just was like, I just hope they win. And Julian Love gets the pick. I'm like, hey, that's cool. And, Leo gets a couple sacks. Hey, that's cool. And JSN had a nice block. Maybe that's it. Thank you, DJ, for chiming in right where you did there. Because we did not touch on AJ Barter. And that was a dude who did stand out to me. And I think that he's a guy that looked like he could be the future at the tight end position going forward.
I just want to say that I told you to EJ Snyder because I said that Barner could come in and he could easily be the Will Dissly replacement plus. He's like, oh no, but he can't catch like Will Dissly. Hey, proven wrong. I hope. Yep.
Yeah, victory lap for Brandon. You don't take many of them, and I think you should take this one. And definitely rub it in EJ's nose a little bit, maybe down at Shrine Bowl.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of Lockett talk. I'm not ready to close the book on Tyler Lockett, Sam, because I feel like we kind of did it last year, and obviously he's not going to be under the contract that he is. I guess because my Tyler Lockett take hasn't changed much. It might be Fant's last game. I'm not, and that's fine. I'm not ready to totally give up on Tyler Lockett coming back, especially if he wants to come back, if he wants to make a deal work. They found a way to make it work last year. He finished the season with 500-600 yards. Like if he ends up being wide receiver 4/3 next year, I think for Tyler Lockett, if they can find a way to keep him on the team and we're in that run it back style mode, then let's bring back Tyler too.
Hey, if they did bring Tyler back as like the, third, 4A, 3B receiver, something like that, I'm for it as long as whoever is the OC doesn't insist that guy has to be the gadget guy, whether or not his skill set fits it or not. Because again, that's one of the things that stood out in this game. The way they tried to get JSN involved early, it was all gadgety bubbles and things like that. That is not who he is.
Right.
That is not who he is.
And Shane Waldron showed you last year that's not who he is.
Golly. Like just another thing in like the death nail in the coffin of Ryan Grubb. It's just like, how have you not realized that by now?
And Sam pointing out, yes, Fant had a heroic last game, getting the touchdown, that go-ahead touchdown at the end, taking the big hit. If that ultimately is our last memory of Noah Fant in a Seahawks uniform, that's a big one.
I like Noah Fant, the dude, a lot. And so, anything that I say about, goodbye, see you later, in terms of him being left off the team, like for next year, it's not personal at all. It just didn't work here.
Well, and maybe it ends up working if they bring in the type of offensive coordinator that actually uses tight ends regularly.
I don't know, man. I mean, how many offensive coordinators has Noah Fant been through now? Between his time in Denver and Seattle, and it's never really popped off the screen. I don't know, man.
All right. Well, Our Seahawks get the win. They do it over the Rams. They close out the Rams with a regular season loss. And now we can look forward to the next Rams game and hopefully getting another loss as well. As Adam, you and I will be going live for a hate watch coming up as the Rams make the playoffs, and we can cheer on either the Vikings or the Lions coming up.
Hey, for sure. And looking forward to watching that game and to Vith here, man. I love that we've got you in there, stirring the pot a little bit and pushing back on stuff, man. The respect is mutual. And thank you for being a part of this. And thank all of you guys, man, for being a part of this. Been an awesome season. And look, we're going to continue to put out great stuff throughout the off season. We're probably going to be tinkering with some ideas. And so we'd love to keep you around throughout the off season as the big decisions come down the pipe. So don't say goodbye for the year. Just keep checking in, a couple times a month at the very
least. There's still off-season football. Like, even though off-season football isn't our favorite, like regular season football is, like, there's still an OC show to talk about it once they make a decision there. Like Clinton's mentioning, Hate Watch 2025, where we can get together. See, we were a little bit more invested in the Arizona Cardinals and Rams game the last time we did that watch party. This one, we can enjoy it, watch. We don't have to pay that close attention to the game. I'm thinking it's more of a hangout, and we throw around some questions, talk about any of the other topics that we want to throw out throughout that game, and follow along and just say, screw the Rams.
There you go. We'll see if you get Clinton to agree with that, because he likes to talk about the game as we do it. So that's between you guys. You can have a throwdown.
I think he already decided. We'll be less invested in this next one.
For sure. Yeah. Hey, man, appreciate that. No rants today, but
well, you got a little bit of one after the email response.
I guess that's true. God, they just pop out of me. I'm sorry, people, but I guess like Marlon, you guys dig it. So thank you for accepting me for who I am.
Well, thanks to you, Adam. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks for a great season. And yes, a lot more to talk about as we move forward, leading up to the draft, throughout the offseason. It's just going to shift now, and we're still going to have some fun.
Still going to have some fun. So because it's the last one of the year, if you haven't hit subscribe, just do it for us, man. It'd be huge. We're close to 5,000 subs on YouTube. It's a big deal for us. If you are one of the folks who happen to have not done that yet, it's just a click, man. It's just a click.
Just click the subscribe button already and get used to clicking the like button. We forget to mention it all the time. Just when you come in, hit the thumbs up. You know why you're here.
Absolutely. And to be fair to Tanner, like, I don't hate all the Tanners. I just don't trust most Tanners. But like I said in the Discord, man, you're the exception, buddy. Love you.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.